The rain in Lagos doesn't fall, it punishes. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday and Tund Buckhead, a man whose name was usually spoken in hushed, respectful tones in boardrooms across 3 continents, was standing on the curb of his own driveway. He wasn't wearing his signature $4,000 Italian suit. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans that had seen better years. Behind the gold-plated gates of his 30-room mansion he could hear music, laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses. Now before I tell you how Tund Buckhead went from the king of the city to a man sleeping on a park bench just to see the truth, I want you to do something for me. If you believe that a woman's loyalty should be measured in the valley, not just on the mountaintop, hit that like button right now. If you love stories where the humble are elevated and the greedy are exposed for who they truly are, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Our channel is a sanctuary for those who believe in the old values, the values our grandmothers taught us. Work hard, trust God, and never let a gold-plated mask fool you into thinking you found a diamond. Comment down below the word truth if you are ready for the legendary payback in today's tale. He watched as his wife of 5 years, Shola, stood on the balcony, the same balcony where they had watched the sunset and promised to grow old together. It wasn't alone. She was laughing into the chest of a man Tund didn't recognize, her hand draped over a bottle of vintage crystal that cost more than a family's yearly rent in Ajij. Tund tried to press the buzzer, but the security guard, man Tund had paid a salary to for 6 years, pushed his hand away. Move along, old man, the guard sneered. The madam said if I see you here again I should call the police for trespassing. Tund looked up one last time. His eyes met Shola's. For a second the music seemed to dim. He expected to see guilt. He expected to see a flicker of the woman who used to tuck their children into bed and whisper that he was her king. But Shola didn't flinch. She leaned over the railing and spat. Not at the ground but at him. I told you, Tund, she shouted over the rain. I don't do for better or for worse. I only do for better. And right now you are the worst thing that ever happened to my reputation. Get out of my sight before I have you arrested for being a nuisance. Tund turned away, his shoes squelching in the mud. He had nothing but $20 in his pocket and a heart that had been shattered into a million jagged pieces. But as he walked toward the dark silhouette of the city, a small, cold smile began to form on his face. Because Shola didn't know one thing. It thought the empire had fallen. She thought the bank accounts were frozen. It thought the man she called a loser was truly broken. She had no idea that this was exactly what he had prayed for. She had no idea that the trap was already set. This is not just a story about money. It's a story about the masks people wear when the sun is shining and how quickly those masks slip when the storm arrives. Let's go back to where the rot first started. Tund Buckhead was 38 years old and worth $3.8 billion. He was the founder of Buckhead Logistics, a shipping empire that controlled 40% of the freight moving through West Africa. He was a man who grew up in a room so small that 4 people had to sleep on one mat. He remembered the hunger. He remembered the smell of his mother's sweat as she sold roasted corn by the roadside to pay his school fees. He had built his empire brick by brick, deal by deal, with hands that were calloused long before they ever held a Mont Blanc pen. When he met Shola, he thought he had finally found his reward. She was a former Miss Nigeria runner-up, a woman who moved with the grace of a gazelle and had a smile that could make a man forget his own name. They met at a charity gala in London. She was wearing a dress that looked like it was woven from moonlight. Tund, usually a man of logic and cold calculations, fell for her in 6 minutes. His mother, Mama Buckhead, had warned him. She was a woman of the soil, a woman who could read a person's spirit by the way they held a glass of water. Tund, she had said in Yoruba, sitting him down in the kitchen of the mansion he had bought for her. A bird with beautiful feathers isn't always the one that can build a strong nest. Watch her hands, my son. Does she reach for yours, or does she reach for what is in yours? But Tund was blinded. He married Shola 8 months later in a wedding that cost $5 million. He gave her everything. He gave her a black centurion card with no limit. He gave her a fleet of cars. He gave her a lifestyle that made her the envy of every socialite in the country. For 4 years life was a dream, or so he thought. The first crack appeared on their 4th anniversary. Tund had been working on a massive merger, a deal that would double the size of his company. He came home late, exhausted, wanting nothing more than to hold his wife and find peace. He found Shola in her massive walk-in closet, surrounded by dozens of shopping bags. "Shola, honey, I'm home," Tund said, leaning against the door frame. She didn't look up. She was busy admiring a diamond-encrusted watch. "Need you to talk to the dealer at the Porsche showroom. I saw the new 911 and they told me there's a 6-month waiting list. Tell them who you are. Get me that car by Friday." Tund sighed. "I'm tired, Shola. The merger is hitting some snags. There's a lot of pressure right now. Can we just talk about us?" Shola finally looked at him, but her eyes weren't soft. They were calculating. "Talk about what?" "If the merger is hitting snags, that means the stock price might dip. If the stock price dips, my allowance might be affected." "Fix it, Tund. That's what you're for. You're the provider. Don't bring your pressure home to me. I have a luncheon tomorrow with the governor's wife and I cannot be seen in last year's jewelry." That night Tund lay awake. He realized that in 4 years Shola had never asked him how he felt. She had never asked about the stress that kept him up at night. She only asked about the numbers. He began to wonder, if the numbers disappeared, would she disappear too? The thought became a seed. And that seed grew into a plan. 2 weeks later, the headlines hit the newsstands like a thunderbolt. Buckhead. Logistics under investigation for massive fraud. Tund Buckhead's assets frozen by the government. It was, of course, a masterpiece of deception. Tund had spent months setting it up with the help of his most loyal friend and head of security, Kofi. Kofi was the only one who knew the truth. They had leaked fake documents, created shell companies that looked like they were failing, and even moved the majority of Tund's liquid assets into a private trust that Shola's name was nowhere near. Tund arrived home that evening acting like a man who had seen the end of the world. He walked into the living room where Shola was on the phone, likely complaining to a friend about a slow tailor. He dropped his briefcase. He let his shoulders slump. He looked like he had aged 20 years. "Shola," he whispered. She hung up the phone, her face pale. "I saw the news, Tund. What is going on?" "The girls are texting me. People are asking me if it's true." "It's bad, Shola," Tund said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. "The government. They've taken everything. The accounts are locked. The company is being seized. They're coming for the house and the cars on Monday." The silence in the room was deafening. He waited for her to go to him. He waited for her to put her arm around him and say, "We will get through this. We started with nothing. We can do it again." Instead, Shola stepped back, as if poverty was a disease she could catch by standing too close to him. "What do you mean they are coming for the cars?" "My Porsche, my G-Wagon, everything, Shola. We have to move. I've rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It's humble, but it's a roof over our heads. We'll have to sell your jewelry to pay for a lawyer." Shola let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Sell my jewelry? Move to a quiet neighborhood? Tund, look at me. Do I look like a woman who lives in a quiet neighborhood? Do I look like a woman who rides in a bus? I'm your husband, Shola. I'm the man you said you loved." "I loved the CEO of Buckhead Logistics," she snapped, her voice rising to a screech. "I loved the man who could buy me a villa in Marbella for my birthday. I didn't sign up to be the wife of a disgraced fraudster living in a slum." "You don't have money, Tund. What use are you to me?" Tund felt the last bit of hope in his chest die. But he had to be sure. He had to see how far the rot went. "I have $20,000 hidden in a safe that they didn't find. It's all we have to start over. Please, Shola, stay with me. Let's build something real this time." Shola's eyes flickered with greed for a split second when he mentioned the 20,000, but then she sneered. 20,000? That wouldn't even cover my skin treatments for a month. "Keep your pittance, Tund. I'm calling my lawyer. I want a divorce, and I want it before the government officially seizes this house. I'm taking the kids to my mother's and don't you dare try to follow. Over the next 3 days, Tund watched as the woman he had adored stripped the house of everything she could carry. He packed designer bags, shoes and fur coats into suitcases. She didn't look at him once. When the authorities, actually Kofi's men in rented uniforms, arrived to evict them, she pushed past Tund at the door. You're a loser, Tund, she hissed as she walked toward a waiting taxi. I wasted the best years of my beauty on a man who couldn't even keep his empire together. Don't ever call me. Tund watched the taxi pull away. He stood in the empty foyer of his mansion, the silence ringing in his ears. Is that enough, boss? Kofi asked, stepping out from the shadows. Tund took a deep breath. No, Kofi. Not yet. I need to see who she turns to. And I need to find the person my mother told me about. The one who sees the man. Not the bank account. Tund moved into that quiet neighborhood he had mentioned. It was a small, dusty street on the outskirts of the city. He lived in a one-room apartment with a communal tap outside. He took a job at a local construction site carrying bags of cement under the hot sun. He wanted to feel the weight of the world. He wanted to remember who Tund Buckhead was without the billions. His skin darkened under the sun. His muscles grew lean and hard. He ate beans and bread from a local vendor. And that is where he met her. Her name was Amara. She was a primary school teacher who lived in the room next to his. She didn't know about Buckhead logistics. She didn't know about the private jets or the mansions. To her he was just Tund, the hardworking man, who always looked a little bit sad. One evening, Tund was sitting on the steps of the apartment building, his hands shaking from the day's labor. Amara walked by carrying a small bowl of jollof rice. She stopped. You look like you've carried the whole world on your back today, Mr. Tund, she said, her voice like a cool breeze. Tund looked up. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. He had a simple wrapper. And her hair was in neat braids. But her eyes, they were the kindest eyes he had ever seen. Just a long day, Amara, he said, trying to smile. She sat down on the step next to him and handed him the bowl. Eat. My mother always said that trouble is easier to handle when your stomach is full. And don't worry. The sun might go down, but it always has a way of finding its way back up again. Tund took the bowl. The rice was warm. Why are you being so kind to me? Just a laborer. I have nothing. Amara laughed, a genuine hearty sound. Nothing? You have your health. Your hands. You have a spirit that hasn't given up yet. Those are the things that matter. Money is just paper, Tund. Comes and goes. But a good man, that is a rare treasure. For the first time in months, Tund felt something other than pain. He felt seen. But while Tund was finding peace in the dust, Shola was busy. He had already moved in with Tund's biggest business rival, a man named Chief Segan. He was posting photos on Instagram of her new jewelry, mocking her unlucky past. It was even telling the children that their father was a criminal who had abandoned them. Tund saw it all. Kofi kept him updated. He saw the betrayal. He saw the lies. And he knew it was time. It was time to end the test. 3 weeks later, the most exclusive event of the year was being held at the Eco Hotel, the annual Business Excellence Gala. Chief Segan, Tund's rival, was the guest of honor. He had spent the last month bragging that he had finally crushed the mighty Tund Buckhead, and more importantly, he had stolen Tund's crown jewel, his wife, Shola. Shola was there, draped in emeralds that Segan had bought her with money he thought he'd made from Tund's downfall. She stood on the red carpet, a glass of champagne in her hand, laughing for the cameras. When a reporter asked her about her ex-husband, she sneered. Tund? He was a fluke. A small man who got lucky. And then got caught. I'm finally with a man who matches my stature. But then the music stopped. A fleet of 6 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms pulled up to the entrance. Not 1, but 6. A phalanx of security guards in sharp suits stepped out, led by Kofi. The crowd hushed. This wasn't Chief Segan's security. This was something different. Something more powerful. The door of the lead car opened and a man stepped out. He was wearing a custom-tailored charcoal suit that cost more than a small house. His presence filled the entire courtyard. It was Tund Bakare. But he didn't look like the broken man from the slum. He looked like a god of industry. He looked like a man who owned the very air people were breathing. And beside him, holding his arm, was Amara. He was transformed. She wore a simple but stunning gold lace gown, her natural hair styled in an elegant crown. She didn't have the hard plastic look of the socialites. She looked like royalty. She looked like a woman who was loved for her soul, not her jewelry. Shola's glass hit the marble floor and shattered. Tund? But the fraud. The government. You were living in a room with a communal tap. Tund walked up the stairs, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. He stopped directly in front of Shola and Segan. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. The fraud was a test, Shola, Tund said, his voice amplified by the silent room. The government didn't freeze my accounts, I did. The slum was my childhood home. I wanted to see if the woman who slept in my bed for 5 years loved the man or the money. He looked at Chief Segan, who was sweating profusely. And Segan, you were trying to sabotage my merger. While you were busy celebrating my fall, my legal team was busy buying up 80% of your debt. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, I don't just own my company, I own yours too. You're fired. Segan, pack your things. Shola lunged forward, her face a mask of desperation. Tund, honey, it was a mistake. I was scared. I was trying to protect the children. I never stopped loving you. This woman, she's a nobody. He's just a teacher. From the street. Tund gently removed Shola's hand from his sleeve. You're right, Shola. He's a teacher. He taught me something you never could. He taught me that a plate of beans given with love is worth more than a 5-course meal served with greed. She saw me when I had nothing, and she stayed. You had everything and you ran. He turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight isn't a celebration of business. It's a celebration of truth. He looked at Amara. Amara, you asked me why I was so sad. I was sad because I thought love was a transaction. Thank you for showing me it's a gift. The fallout was swift and legendary. Chief Segan was bankrupted within the Shola tried to sue for a massive divorce settlement, but Tund's lawyers produced the video evidence of her betrayal and the prenuptial agreement she had signed when she thought he was unstoppable. She walked away with exactly what she brought into the marriage. Nothing. The last anyone heard of Shola, she was living in a small rented room, the very kind she had mocked, trying to sell her used designer bags on Instagram to pay her rent. The friends she had lunched with, the governor's wife, they blocked her number the moment her credit card stopped working. Tund and Amara didn't have a $5 million wedding. They married in a small garden ceremony behind the school where Amara still teaches. Tund didn't just build a new empire. He built the Amara Foundation, which constructs schools and housing for the very people Shola called nobodies. Tund learned that his mother was right. A bird's feathers don't tell you if it can weather the storm. Only the storm can do that. And that, my friends, is the lesson of this tale. Your value doesn't come from the car you drive or the title on your business card. Your value is found in the heart of the person who stays when the lights go out. The people who try to break you are usually the ones who are already broken inside. Don't seek revenge, seek the truth. Because the truth has a way of rewarding the humble and humbling the proud. If this story moved your heart, if it reminded you to cherish the loyal souls in your life, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more modern African folk tales that speak to the soul. Comment below with the word loyalty if you believe that character is more important than cash. Remember, a river that forgets its source will surely dry up. Stay grounded, stay kind, and never forget where you came from. Until next time, keep your heart pure and your spirit strong. This is the end of today's lesson, but the story of your life is still being written. Make it a legendary one.